Is this the dagger?
Illegal substitution. Too many men on the field. Saskatchewan.
Gizmo has a block and the sideline. He has not stepped out. He may go all the way. He needs one block and he'll do it easily.
Promise Mess I wouldn't do this.
McDavid stops up. What a move. Shoots. Scores!
Hey everybody, welcome to The Outsiders, powered by the Macintosh Group at RE/MAX River City. I'm Bryn Griffiths. He's Robin Brownlee as always, and joining us from Calgary is Natasha Staniszewski. How you doing?
I'm doing awesome. Thank you for having me.
What are you doing? Tell everybody what you're doing now, because I think this sounds like a lot of fun.
What am I doing? Well, I moved to Calgary last summer, and in terms of employment, which I think is what you're asking, is I just got hired on by the Calgary Stampeders for Stamps TV. So I'll be hosting the games. Basically, I'll kind of be reporting for the team, mostly football. And then if the Flames get busy, which they might here over the next few months, I might be filling in on Flames TV as well.
Let's. So you and Harvey the Hound, have you met? Because Harvey is a legendary figure in that town.
Well, I was at a game a few weeks ago, sitting in the stands, just watching by myself, and he came over and gave me a big bear hug, and we got a little photo. So we did meet, but I don't know who's on the inside yet. Even though I work for the team, eventually I'll figure that out, but I have not met the person on the inside.
For those younger listeners, by the way, who's on the inside is just as important as who is on the outside, correct?
Correct. Absolutely.
How's that for a cover? Just thought we'd better say that.
And if Harvey ever gets out of town, just give that tongue a yank.
Yes. Well, that's what everyone said to me after. Like, why didn't you pull the tongue? And I was so ambushed by him, I totally even forgot. Like, that's exactly what I should have done, but I just didn't think about it in the moment.
Before we veer off, I got to say one thing. Having worked in Calgary and Winnipeg and Edmonton, Harvey is, and also worked for the Oilers and the Jets, so you get a chance to see mascots and how they work. Harvey is in the top two for my money. He and S.J. Sharkey, I think, are pretty fantastic. And who's the guy in Philly? Who's the Philly guy? Oh, damn it. I can't remember. Yeah.
Grady?
Yes.
Grady, right?
Anyway,
yes.
those guys are, if they're guys, are pretty fantastic.
Bryn, before I got to veer off before you veer off.
Okay.
For me, the guy is good old Homer from the Edmonton Trappers AAA, because he's the only mascot I know that during a game, one of the Albuquerque Dukes players, Benny DiStefano, who went to the big leagues and played, and I think is still coaching in the big leagues. There was some guy, as you know, Homer would stand on the top of the dugout and do his ooga booga and hex the visiting players. Well, there was a guy behind Homer. DiStefano goes up, he strikes out. The guy says, DiStefano, you suck, you're terrible, what a clown. He heckled Benny DiStefano for 3 innings straight. Benny thought it was Homer.
Uh-oh.
Between innings, about 4 innings in, this is what makes it noteworthy. Benny DiStefano walks across the infield, goes and pulls Homer off the top of the Trapper dugout and beats the crap out of him. Like, he was only making minor league money then. There had to be a loss. And I know there were 2 guys who played Homer. And this guy says, it was funny. I'm staring up through my Homer eyes, and here's this ball player. His teeth are bared. He's laying into me, and he can't hurt me. It's like, paka, 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 paka against the foam rubber costume. So now he starts to laugh inside because he's nervous. This guy's trying to beat the shit out of him. And this is making Benny even crazier because now the guy who's been heckling him is laughing at him when he's trying to beat him up. I wrote a full broadsheet page in the Journal on this. It was terrific. Anyway, that's my taking it sideways.
You won't have a problem with Harvey. Yeah, trust me, you won't have a problem with Harvey. Okay, let's go way back here. How did you get started in broadcasting? This is going to go back even before I knew you at CTV Edmonton, but let's go back to where you're from and how you get started.
Sure. Yeah. Born and raised in Edmonton. Was an Oiler fan, was a hockey fan growing up, was an Eskimos fan. I kind of missed the first few Stanley Cups. I don't remember them that well, but certainly that one, I remember Gretzky getting traded. I remember that one in 1990 vividly when Mark Messier was the captain. So I was an Oiler fan growing up. Played sports in high school. And
Which high school did you go to, by the way? You got to give a shout out.
Louis St. Laurent.
Oh, right next to my Harry Ainley, my beloved Ainley. Okay.
There you go. So in high school, I kind of thought, like, I used to watch Hockey Night in Canada on Saturday, obviously all the time. And I thought I could be a reporter. I think I could, ask some good questions. So it was kind of always in the back of my mind that it was something I wanted to try, but there weren't a lot of women doing it at the time. And I would have had to go to NAIT to get a diploma, and everybody in my family went to the U of A. They all had degrees, the university degrees. That was just kind of what they did. And trying to be on TV seemed like a ridiculous notion. So I kind of dropped that idea and I went to the U of A. I got a degree. I worked for a few years and was pretty miserable doing a 9-to-5 desk job for a few years. So when I was 26, I sort of had an aha moment and I decided to go back to school. So then I went to NAIT, got my diploma, and then moved to Saskatchewan to start my practicum there, bounced around for a few years, moved a lot, ended up back in CTV in Edmonton for a few years, and then off to TSN, which was supposed to be 1 year to cover Jennifer Hedger's mat leave, and that turned into 10 years. So that's how it happened.
As you know, broadcasters move around a lot, and a lot of it has nothing to do with you. It has to do with politics. It has to do with money and that kind of stuff. You kind of fell on the wrong side of it. I've fallen on the wrong side of that numerous times, and you bounced back pretty well. But for you, it's an opportunity. Was that the first big one of those shockers that you had to deal with? And you've bounced back great.
It was the first time, yes. I'd always tried to prepare myself for it because, like you said, it happens in the industry all the time. Yep. So I knew it could happen, but I don't think you're ever really prepared for the shock that you feel when it does happen. But I think, I've said to people, always in the back of my head, I always thought I would move back to Alberta. All my family is out here. I couldn't see myself staying out in Toronto permanently anyways. So I kind of already was trying to figure out ways to get back here. So when I lost my job, that was, in a way, it was sort of the push that I needed, or it made it really easy to move back to Alberta when I lost my job. So it's been great to be back in Alberta, closer to my family has been awesome. Calgary's been great. And yeah, we'll see how the job goes. Hopefully, sometimes it takes longer than you think to sort yourself out and settle things out. And people say, oh, you'll land on your feet, And I don't know if I've quite landed yet, but I feel like I'm getting there.
Now, what's the connection, Natasha, that landed you in Calgary as opposed to back home in Edmonton?
It's a great question. Everybody asks me that. And it's a simple answer is I always thought I would just enjoy living in Calgary. I moved a lot in Saskatchewan. I liked bouncing around. Actually, I liked discovering new cities. Calgary was always a pretty city to me. I wanted to be closer to the mountains. So I thought I would give it a go out here. And if things didn't work out for whatever reason, then maybe Edmonton would be next on my list. But there was something about here, some sort of pull that I just wanted to try moving out here first.
Let's talk about the dynamics of the two cities, because I've lived in both and I love both, actually. And somebody who was born and bred in Edmonton and followed the Edmonton sports teams, and then you get pushed in and you are happy to, at least in my situation, to jump on a job at Sportsnet 960, The Fan, for a year and a half hosting the Flames games. People in Calgary thought that was a weird stretch for me. And I kind of went, no, not really. These two cities have a lot of things in common. They also are very different in some ways. One of the biggest issues that, I don't know if you're having to deal with it, I had to deal with it for the first 3 months, was it was really tough to gain acceptance as an Edmontonian in Calgary. And then you realize that people will eventually shake that off. How are you finding that part of it? Because that's the toughest part of it for me.
You know what? Everyone's been so nice. I've actually been surprised by it in a way. Not that people have been nice, but you're right. I thought there would be a little bit more pushback, considering I've never hidden the fact that I'm from Edmonton and I'm a huge Oilers fan. But everybody at CSEC at the Flames organization has been so nice and so professional and so welcoming. And I mean, it's been weird for me, for sure. Like, you know, I went on a tour of McMahon, and then of course at the Saddle Dome, and there's just red everywhere. And I'm like, oh my God, this might be hard to get used to. But I think I will eventually. I hope. It's been fun so far. So
It's like you walk into the room and under the breath, you can hear, she's from Edmonton, you know. Edmonton.
And that's fine. You can live with that.
You know what? The best thing about it, because I'm from neither. I'm a Vancouver person who came to the Prairie. Now, two really good sports cities. To me, it doesn't matter where you're from, but I'm not from here. And this is a time in the history of the Flames where they're awful good this year. Mm-hmm. The Stampeders have been good for a long time. I'm not sure what they once were, but it's a pretty dynamic set of cities to be working in. And you get that old Battle of Alberta thing mixed in there. That is a real, true rivalry. You don't have to make it up. That's part of the fun too, isn't it?
It's awesome. I went to the Battle of Alberta, I think it was 3 or 4 weeks ago, the 3-1 game. I don't know if you guys remember.
You mean the close one, the close game.
The close one. And then I missed the amazing one, which I'm still kicking myself for missing that one last week when it was 9-5 or whatever. But the crowd was awesome. It was so great. Like, obviously there were so many Edmonton fans in the crowd and everybody was so into it. And it wasn't a hostile crowd. Like, both sides kind of respected each other, I think, which maybe it's not always like that. There's probably a fight or two in there once in a while, but it was so great to be in the seats watching that game. And the fact that both teams are actually good now, which it wasn't like that for a while, right? The Battle of Alberta was a joke, but now it is fun to watch. And when both teams are going, there's so much talent on both sides. And I mean, the Flames are a likable team right now. It's hard to be mad at the Flames, right? There's a ton of talent on that side too, and fun hockey, high scoring, good goaltending. So it's great. I'm excited for it.
You've parachuted in, and they're having a great season right now. I think if they're not the best team in the West, they're number 2. But tell me a little bit about the feel from the fans. You're talking to everybody around there. Is there a confidence level, or are they confident but maybe a little concerned because they've been let down before?
To be honest with you, I haven't talked to a ton of fans yet. I haven't met a huge ton of people because of COVID and that kind of stuff. So I've met obviously media folks and the people who work with the team. But the sense that I get is pretty optimistic still. Daryl has the team, I think, playing in a way that everyone is pretty excited about, a consistent way. You know, they lost the last 3 games. I don't think you can necessarily call it a slump. Hopefully, I mean, we'll see if they can get back on track on this road trip. But I think people are pretty positive. They have a lot of the right things that you need to win in the playoffs, especially goaltending. They have a bit of veteran leadership. So I don't know. Like you say, they're the second best team. I don't know if anybody can beat Colorado, but I think there's a lot of optimism that they can at least win a couple of rounds.
Now, Natasha, do you know Daryl? I mean, you've done hockey for a long time on the national stage, but are you just getting to know him now? Because I tell you what, if you don't know Daryl, you can be like, whoa, what's this guy about? And when you get to know him, he's completely the opposite.
Well, so I actually met Daryl. I don't think he remembers this though. I met him years ago. Myself and a bunch of the girls from TSN, we were at a golf trip in Prince Edward Island, and we were at a pub having a beer, and we look over and there's Daryl Sutter at the bar. This was in the middle of the summer. Like, it was the weirdest thing. Like, what is Daryl Sutter doing here? So we kind of looked over, and I didn't know if he knew us, right? We don't know if these guys watch TSN or whatever, but he was looking at us, we were looking at him. So we eventually kind of went over and said hello, and he was perfectly nice guy. Like, everybody says that there's kind of 2 sides to him, right? So we had a really nice chat. And then I met him again just 2 weeks ago here when they were showing me around. I met the entire coaching staff, and like you said, just like a nice regular guy, asked me where I'm from, asked me about my family. We had a really nice chat, and that's my only sort of interaction with him so far. I haven't had a chance to ask him questions after in post game or anything like that. And I know there's two sides to him, but I think he just plays the media like to a T. Like he knows, he says he doesn't use them to get a message to his players.
Come on.
Right. Exactly. So
Sure.
yeah, I think Daryl is awesome. I think whatever he says to you, you can't necessarily take it personally if things go sideways in post game, but I haven't had that experience yet. So we'll see, but I'm not too worried about it. Yeah.
How about the football stuff coming up with the Stampeders? Are you really looking forward to that? And what is your role going to, how's it going to develop?
So that will be mostly in-game hosting. So I'll be the one on the Jumbotron doing the little pregame show and then the halftime. I think they have some interviews on the field at halftime. And then just like I said, reporting. So I'll be at practice every day, getting sound, doing interviews, just lots of content for the website, for Instagram, all that kind of stuff. So
not looking to get you into trouble here, but you're working for the teams now. So that line gets a little more blurred. Is that going to be a real challenge for you? Because it is for everybody. It was for me, that's for sure.
I just had a conversation with Brendan Parker, who does Flames TV, about that the other day. And he said it was tough for him. And for sure, I think it will be an adjustment for me. I haven't done a ton of, right now with the Stamps, we've just done some sort of catching up interviews. We haven't had to cover any actual games or anything like that. But I'm curious to see how I respond to that. Even with, like I said, with the Flames, they lost 3 in a row. They've lost 3 in a row. And automatically my head is like, sound the alarm. And I'm ask all these questions. It's like, well, no, you kind of have to play it a little bit safer, I guess. So we'll see how that adjustment goes.
Well, the gig changes and you know who you work for and everybody should know that. I always smile when people go, that Gene Principe, he's such a homer here in Edmonton. He's the host. He's not a hardcore beat guy criticizing the team. So, the gig changes. What I'm interested in, Natasha, when we go to the CFL and the Stamps, but your bigger view, COVID's been a challenge. The CFL is a gate-driven league, not a TV-driven league as much. You need people in the stands to make a go of it. It's been a tough couple years. It's been a very tough couple years here in Edmonton. Management changes were made. The feeling was there wasn't the right kind of people that were to connect with the people that pay the bills. Where do you think the CFL's at now? Does it still need a bit of a comeback? And under a guy like Ambrosie, is he the guy to get it done in your mind?
Yeah, it's a great question because I feel nervous when I think about the CFL, especially when I think about the Edmonton crowds, because that's what I'm used to. And I remember just had this conversation with my brother when I was in high school or university. I might have not been the hugest Elks fan, Eskimos fan, where I was super into like the X's and O's of the game. But I remember it was a cool thing to do still. We'd go to the game, we'd get our beers, the sun would be setting, Commonwealth would be packed. And it was just a thing that we did. Whereas now, I don't know if people in their 20s do that anymore or 30s. I don't think they do, right? Attendance is like way down, which when I saw that in Edmonton was really concerning because I felt like they always used to have really great crowds. So is Randy the guy? That's a great question. He's been at it a few years now. Obviously there have been some huge challenges. Missing a whole season is bad. That's not good. They managed to get the one underway yesterday or last year with COVID. So that's been good, but there's a lot of work to be done. And I know people talk about selling the players and really marketing the players. And I don't know if that's the answer. That's why I'm not the commissioner. I don't have all the answers, but there needs to be some extra work done for sure.
Well, and I certainly wouldn't put it all on Randy. He's the overseer in his position. As you know, here in Edmonton, there was trouble. We know what happened. It was out there, long-time employees, being cut loose. The connection with the community wasn't there. Now we got a guy like Victor Cui in, taking over. He's 50, but he might as well be 30 because he's very connected with the social media, putting out the Instagram stuff and the Twitter stuff. I guess the league can only be as strong as the connection each team makes with its community. Is that the bottom line we need?
I think you're right. And I think that's when I was hired with the Stamps, that was sort of the conversation that we had, was we need to really do a better job at selling our team to our own fans too, whether it's, like you said, even as simple as making our Instagram page or the Facebook page better or whatever.
Are you doing TikTok? Are you doing TikTok?
I am on TikTok. I don't post on TikTok. I'm just a silent observer on TikTok at the moment.
All right.
But yeah, it's trying to come up with ideas to re-engage the fan base, right? And those younger players. And I think every city has different challenges when it comes to that. So that's part of something that I'll be trying to help the Stampeders with.
Are you going to be roving the sidelines? Because there's a story. This goes back and it involves an Edmonton broadcaster named Al McCann. Who, when I came to CTV, was basically, if he made a phone call to the newsroom, you could almost feel the whole building go, Al McCann. Al was, for CTV, this had been back in the 70s, was on the sidelines, completely forgetting that there's this horse that would run back up and down the field after every touchdown. And he got absolutely plowed over by the horse after a touchdown and went to the hospital with a concussion. So I just want you to be ready. If you're working the sidelines, don't pull an Al. Be ready and keep your head on a swivel, because I don't know what the horse is. I don't even know the horse's name these days.
I
but you will. You'll have to know the name. That's Quick Trigger might be the name of the horse right now, but just be aware of that.
That's a good tip, because I will be on the sidelines. So thank you for that.
Yes, absolutely. Be ready. I want to go back a little further again here, and then I want to talk about the mug you're drinking out of, because it's kind of caught my eye. But first things first, when you were at Louis and you were thinking, I might want to do that, did you have was there anybody that was kind of, mentors, maybe not the word, but somebody who maybe showed the way for you? Because I know Lisa Miller was a longtime veteran at what was CFRN and CTV, one of the few female reporters in our city. But was there anybody that you looked at and said, I want to be like her, or I want to be like him because I like the job that they do?
Well,
other than Robin. Yeah.
You know what? I get asked this question a lot, and I feel bad because I don't have a great answer for it. I didn't have, it was kind of just a blur of faces when I think about it now. And as a kid, like we didn't have cable for the longest time. So I remember the one that kind of sticks out for me is, at the time, I think Sportsnet had sort of all the divisional broadcasts. So yep. I remember Martine Geyer, who's still there. I think she was like one of the Western gals. I remember her. And then the Score branched out a little bit too, and they had a lot of women, but that was kind of already when I was getting into the business. So to answer your question, I don't have any one or two specific people that I really remember in high school anyways. Teresa
Hergert was another one at TSN a long time ago as well. It was one of those groundbreakers and somebody who led the parade. And I don't know where Teresa is. I don't know what the story is there, but she was a mainstay on TSN along with Ken Chilliback and people from when things were getting started. So, but it's fun. As long as you're having fun and you're enjoying it, that's kind of the main thing, isn't it? Because there's a lot of pressure.
Yes. Lots of pressure. Yeah.
What was the first year for TSN, Bryn? Do you recall?
Oof, boy, it's got to be. I remember you were talking about cable TV. It's certainly in the 80s. I got to think it was probably like the early to mid 80s. I don't have to look it up.
When you mentioned Teresa, that's why. I remember I was at the Kamloops Daily News, and I did an interview with Vic Rauter.
Oh my goodness!
That was like the first year of TSN and what these big plans were, and 24/7 sports TV, and it seemed like pie in the sky. And now here, all these years later, you wonder what you'd do if you didn't have the TSNs and the sports nets and the access to information. In some ways, it feels like there's more opportunity out there. Yet in other ways, it's a bit of a shrinking business in terms of personnel, isn't it?
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. It's like, what did we do before these national networks? But now it sure feels like they're shrinking a little bit. And when I get kids in school asking me, should I go into broadcasting? Part of me wants to say, like, no, don't do it, because I don't know where they're going to work. But I always end up telling them, if you are good, somebody will find you and somebody will hire you. Obviously, I don't want to bust anybody's dreams, and there are still jobs out there, but it feels like it's changing a little bit. But I mean, it's always been a hard industry. Even when I got into it, like I didn't know. I was working in, Lloydminster and then Regina and Yorkton. And I thought, how is a job going to open up next? Like, how am I ever going to get to Saskatoon or Edmonton, or how am I ever going to climb that ladder? And yet somehow there was always a job that just opened up for me. Yeah. Timing, luck. I never thought I would even get to Saskatoon, and I did. And then all of a sudden someone left Edmonton, and I thought, oh my God, it actually happened. So you never know. As hard as it sometimes looks to be able to make it, as they say, there's always a way.
1984, by the way, is when TSN launched. Okay, so I just double checked. I had time. Somebody left Edmonton, so you were able to step into that position. I'm assuming that was either Rashog or Brian Mudryk.
It was actually Ken Reed.
Oh, Kenny Reed, of course.
Yeah.
Yep, absolutely. Another crazy guy. Kenny's a good guy.
All the good people come from Edmonton, is what I say.
Now, it's funny that you should mention that, because this came up when I worked in Calgary, and there seemed to be a bit of angst over the fact that TSN and Sportsnet seemed to always be taking people out of Edmonton. And the feeling in Calgary was, well, that's because people don't want to stay in Edmonton. However, there was a level of competitiveness here. Guys would want to beat the shit out of each other for a story and then would go for a beer afterwards. So it was interesting. In Calgary, everybody was very friendly right from the get-go, even at practices. I never felt that the level of competition. I might get in trouble. Glenn Reed or somebody is going to send me a note, or Grant Pollock. But it was a lot different. I think you're going to really feel and notice a bit of a difference in the way the media is there as compared to here. But at the end of the day, you still got to get your job done, right?
I already feel that. I noticed that for sure. I thought it was really competitive in Edmonton when I was working there for those 2 years. Really competitive between the TV stations and the newspapers. Yes, I haven't found that yet in Calgary. So that was a difference for sure. And yeah, Edmonton was a lot of hard work. Everyone was busting their butts to get stories.
Now, we know a lot of people have left Edmonton to go east. You've been early in your career, granted, in Edmonton. You spent the bulk of it in TO. Now you're in Calgary. Is there from inside the business, is there something that strikes you in terms of difference between being a reporter in Edmonton? I know in Toronto on TSN, you're more of a national figure, so to speak, but whether it's the competition or the camaraderie, there's a lot that goes in to making the job, whether you're broadcast, whether you're print. Are there significant differences between the markets in terms of getting along and just doing the job?
I mean, there is definitely competition in Toronto between the national networks. There's so many different levels, I guess, between the anchors in Toronto. Would there be competition? I don't think so. When I see all of them out, it would be fine and friendly. If you're an insider, though, let's say, I don't think they all get along from network to network, right? I know they don't. So there is still a level of competition there. But because I mostly anchored for TSN, I wasn't really in the trenches as much as I was in Edmonton. I think I probably reported a little bit more in Edmonton. So I felt it more in Edmonton than anywhere, big time. Yeah. Hey,
let's talk about your coffee mug for a second, because it's very green, and starting up this week is another edition of the Masters. Where'd you get that mug from? I'm quite jealous.
So these are the cups that they serve the beer in when you go to the Masters. So I have been there 3 times. I'm so lucky.
Three times?
3 times as a fan, and you order your beer and they give it to you in these green cups. And at the end of it, everyone collects the green cups and it's a free souvenir. So I have about 20 of these in my shelf because I take them home with me. So I've been 3 times and it is as awesome as everybody says it is.
Now, were you there for one of the times you went? Were you there for a Tiger win?
I was there for Tiger's comeback win. Yes.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. That was my 3rd and final time. And I vividly remember. So usually I would go once we went for moving day and then another time moving day and then the final as well. And we would have seats on the 16th hole. So for most of the day, you kind of just roam around and you follow whoever you want. But then for the last few groups, we would settle into our seats on 16 and just watch everybody roll through. And I remember just the buzz of him, walking. He would made his tee shot and then he's walking around the water. And at that time, it was pretty much in the bag that he was going to win, and just the energy from the crowd is just incredible. And just, watching him do his little stroll to the green was pretty cool.
Now, was that final win, memory fails me, is that the one with the chip shot where the ball goes in on the last turn, or was that an earlier win, Bryn?
That was earlier.
Oh,
Yeah, exactly. Very magical moment at the Masters, for sure.
That was like a built-in
Nike
commercial for Nike. You couldn't film one better than that, could you?
No, it's unbelievable. Hey, we have to ask this of you because we've had a few people on who've attended the Masters, and everybody I'm sure would love to do it. But we always ask everybody that first moment where you're entering the hallowed grounds. Do you remember how excited you were? What do you remember the most? I remember when I went to St. Andrews, the one thing that I always remember is it just seemed like a little emerald green space in the middle of this small little town, and this is where the game started. But at Augusta, that's something special at a different level too.
It is. I think that is what you notice, though. It's like you're in a fairy tale. Like, it just doesn't seem real the way everything, and you see it on TV, but the way everything is manicured just perfectly. Like the green, like the color looks fake. The flowers are perfect. The sun is shining. Like the birds are chirping. Like it's exactly, you're just walking and it doesn't seem like you're in a real place, sort of. And then, once you start moving around and the crowds are there, and I love the fact they don't allow cell phones, right? You can't bring your cell phone and you get kicked out if you have it. So the fact that you don't have your phone and you're just so into the moment and you're there, you spend all day there, you're there 5 or 6 hours and you're just, I don't know, it's so easy to get caught up sort of just in the experience, and you don't have your phone, like I said, and you kind of give yourself to the golf and that's it.
I'm starting to just get all sweaty thinking about going without a phone all day. That must have been a tough one. Was it for you?
No. I mean, I think everyone gets the shakes for like the first half an hour. And like I say, you just give yourself up to the golf. You just let it go. And then, because of course you want to take a photo, you want to take a video, like whatever. So that's what everybody wants to do nowadays. But no, there's something about it that's great. And it kind of adds to the excitement because you can't follow the leaderboard the way you can at other tournaments, right? So you have to watch those big old rickety white ones, which also adds another level of suspense because the guy goes up there and everyone's looking and they're waiting for him to change the numbers. Yeah, so it's great. No phones is the best idea ever, in my opinion.
And Bryn, come on, you and I are old enough. We go back to the days when no cell phones, but when the first ones were that big gray brick, with the
Motorola. Boop, boop, boop. Yeah, brutal, absolutely brutal. Hey, when you look at what you've been able to cover and events that you've been able to go to, do you have one that stands out or a positive one that just will never leave you? I'm guessing that's one of them, what you just talked about, but there've got to be a few other ones that really stand out for you.
Yeah, the Masters is probably number one, I would say. I was also working the night the Raptors won, which was pretty cool. I was anchoring that night, and I played basketball, so I was a basketball fan, but I wasn't a hardcore Raptors fan the way a lot of other people were. And for me, it was cool just to see the people in Toronto, how happy they were to see it actually happen. And just think about it now that the Raptors actually won is still mind-boggling. The fact that they were able to pull that off is a huge accomplishment. So that was really great. And one other moment is, this one's not that amazing, but I drove to Chicago in my first couple of years there because I wasn't sure how long I would be in Toronto. So I was trying to see as much as I could. So I just drove to Chicago for a Stanley Cup final game because I had never been to one before. And I thought, I'll just randomly go. So I drove and got myself a little ticket and watched a game and just really enjoyed that. Hockey's always been my favorite love. And I've never seen a Stanley Cup won in person. So that's still on the bucket list. But it was cool just to go to watch the Blackhawks.
Did you get to Wrigley?
No. Oh, yes, I did. Yeah, I have been.
Okay.
Yeah, I have been there as well.
All right.
Did you get to the Redhead Piano Bar?
The Redhead.
Better break that one down, Robin. What's so special about that place?
I think so.
That used to be Ronnie Lowe's favorite. Everybody had to go there when he was the coach of the Oilers, and it was a cool old-fashioned piano bar. And that's all. It wasn't the hippest place or the place to be seen if you were 27 years old, but it was a hell of a lot of fun, and the drinks were terrific. So, that's
Make a note of that one, will you?
Next time.
Hey,
sure.
Before we go, too, one of the things that I can remember my favorite interview and I can remember my least favorite interview. Can you do that?
Oh,
like an interview where you went, this is either going poorly or I feel sorry for this person. Let me go first. It'll give you a split second so that you can kind of think about it. I had the privilege of working on the national coast-to-coast radio broadcast of the Grey Cup game. It would have been in 2002, and it was the Edmonton Eskimos against the Montreal Alouettes. And I got the Eskimo locker room post-game, and I had to interview Ricky Ray after they lost. It was tough. It's the toughest interview I've ever had to do, mostly because I thought they were going to win at home, and they did not. And Ricky was, of course, perfect, but you could tell it just ripped his heart out. And it really was difficult. And strangely enough for me, the best one was I had a chance to talk to Ed Hervey after his career ended, and we veered off and talked about how he grew up in Compton. And it was one of those times where I went in prepped with all this stuff on his career, and then we just naturally had a conversation and started talking about how he survived and how he got out of Compton, how he started playing football. I never saw it coming. And it just kind of washed over me. That's a high and that's a low. And the other one too, unfortunately, I was broadcasting when Brad Horning had his terrible accident with the Regina Pats in a game against the Moose Jaw Warriors. And sadly, we've lost Brad here inside this last year, but I had to broadcast the 40 minutes of them trying to save his life on the ice. And it was just, I'll never forget it as long as I live. But you know what? It's all part of life. This is what we go through. We go through the highs, we go through the lows. And for me, career-wise, those would be the three that I remember the most. But it's tough. And you're still just kind of getting rolling still. You got a long way to go.
Yeah, I haven't done a ton of interviews in huge moments like that. Like when I was reporting, I was always kind of down the totem pole a little bit. So I never was sent to like those huge games necessarily. I remember... why does his name escape me right now? Oh, I'm sorry. My phone just went off.
That's all right.
The quarterback for the Montreal Alouettes.
Anthony Calvillo.
Thank you.
No problem.
In Edmonton, when they won the Grey Cup, I interviewed him, there was a big scrum. We were asking questions, but he didn't reveal. Remember was it the cancer that he didn't reveal till after all the field? So I actually missed that whole thing. So I had to run back and get post, but that one kind of stands out a little bit because he wasn't 100% happy and I wasn't sure why. And then after he revealed that sort of off the field. So I kind of remember that. But in terms of interviews, I did an event with Wayne Gretzky, which is a bit of a boring answer, but it's always cool to talk to Wayne. We did like a 45-minute thing up there, which was really fun. So that one stands out a little bit. But I haven't had any super heartbreaking ones.
Good.
Yes.
Excellent.
Yeah.
I'm glad to hear that, quite frankly.
And you know what's cool, Natasha, is this is definitely a new chapter for you. You've been around, you've been in the business long enough that you're not a eyes wide open, wow, I'm really doing this for a job. New aspect, though, you're going to do some of that interviewing, you're going to do some of that reporting that you don't do on the desk. I don't know if you'll come across any of the stories that tear your heart out. Hopefully nothing like that happens on the sidelines of a football game or whatever, but you got to be excited because those stories, and see, I forget a lot of the scores, I forget a lot of the statistics at the end of the day, and I'm much older than you, 20 years, I think. It's the people and the little moments, and you're due for some of those in this new chapter of your career. So that's got to be exciting.
You're right. It's the people stories that sort of stick out. And when I think about emotional moments, like even anchoring on the debt, when Humboldt happened, just talking about that night after night, I didn't interview anybody, but even just talking about it night after night was emotional. When Joey Moss passed away, I got really emotional on the desk, which I wasn't even expecting either, but that moment really hit me too. And you're right. Even when it comes to, there's little things I'll see that I probably didn't before. For example, Brett Ritchie was injured the other day in the Flames game, and I was underneath watching, and so I saw him come off the ice, the part where the fans don't get to see, and you don't get to see those moments as a fan. And he was, taken off. He wasn't putting any weight on his leg, and you think, oh, that's a real person with a real injury, and it changes your view sometimes, or you forget that the players and athletes are real people sometimes. So that was interesting to see.
Hey, before we let you go here, your gold medal in volleyball, you won a provincial title. Are you keeping that gold medal somewhere?
I don't know if I have the medal, but that's been my claim to fame when it comes to sports accomplishments in my whole life. That's probably my proudest. Although I did break 100 in golf a couple of years ago. That was a big monkey
nice
back for me too. But volleyball gold and breaking 100, those are my two.
That was a provincial title, Louis Saint Laurent, for you?
Yes. Yeah. Grade 12. Finally, we won provincials when I was in grade 12. Yeah.
Hey, and the other thing too, you're golfing a lot, right?
Trying to. I took it up 6 or 7 years ago. Love it. Not the greatest at it, but I love it.
Don't have to be. Just get out there and have some fun. Hey, thanks for this. Can we talk to you again? Maybe in the middle of the football season?
Would love to. Absolutely.
We need a Calgary insider. And so now we've got an Edmonton insider who's a Calgary insider. I'm not sure how that's going to work out. No, it'll be great. Hey, thanks for your time. This is fantastic.
Thanks, guys. It was a pleasure. I'm glad we were able to make this work. I appreciate it.
So here we are. It's the spring, and hey, look who's in the studio. Bryn McIntosh from the McIntosh Group at Remax River City. How you doing?
I'm well. How are you, Bryn?
Great. It's nice to have you in here. The spring is here. And things are getting busy?
Spring has sprung and the market is on fire, Bryn. Absolutely incredible. For single-family houses anyway, in Edmonton.
Really? And it's just kind of flipped the switch, huh?
I've never seen an increase in values this much in the last 30 days. Absolutely incredible. Edmonton's growth for the single-family market. And I can't put a pinpoint on why, but it's pretty awesome if you own a house in Edmonton.
Now, with the economy the way it is, and it's just kind of crazy right now with everything that's going on in the world, how is that affecting us?
That's a great question.
Do you want some time to think about it?
I do. Yeah. I don't know if it's not like Edmonton's completely insulated from everything, but
yeah.
If we're talking about the Russian war, for example, and the price of oil, that's nothing but a good thing for all of Alberta. So that's going to drive house prices. The unfortunate
positive of a horrible negative.
Of course, every time you pay more at the gas pump, it's brutal as a family, but pretty good for the economy.
Yeah. So how do people get involved? If they're thinking about it, now's the time to move, right?
Well, definitely. If you're thinking about selling, I can't think of a better time to give us a call. We're at 780-464-0075. And either myself or one of my team members will be happy to meet with you to talk about the sale of your property.
What about getting an evaluation done on their house if they're looking at selling?
Yeah, that's where we'll start. Completely complimentary. No obligation, and we'll sit down, we'll talk about the value, we'll show what's going on in the market, and we'll even give you, the seller, some tips on how to get the most out of their house.
Perfect. So once again, how do people get a hold of you?
780-464-0075 or on the web, macintoshgroup.ca.
And here you are in the sports thing. It's nice to have you here.
Well, I love watching you guys do the sports show.
Excellent. Thanks. Well, there you go. That's another episode of The Outsiders. Almost out of the way, except now we just banter and talk about what's on our plate, what's been bugging us, what we've loved over this past week or so. Where do you want to start? Hey, just before we get going on that, I'm excited about the Masters coming up this week. I always am. It's one of the very few events where I actually barricade myself inside the basement in the yelling room to watch it in all of its glory. It's one of those few times where I don't ask to be interrupted. Well, actually, I command it. I demand not to be interrupted during the Masters. Not a lot of sporting events where I'll board myself up in the basement and just say, leave me alone unless there's a beverage or snacks involved. But I'm looking forward to it. I see Tiger as a game day decision. So that's at last report when we taped. Tiger might. That's another great story. I'd be very surprised because I think he's got his standards way up here. I don't know if he's quite there yet, but what do I know? I'm in Edmonton, Alberta, Canada, taping this thing. But if he's ready to go, I guess he feels he's ready to go. But I'm looking forward to that.
Well, a couple things, and I'm with you, Bryn, about the Masters overall. I remember back in '93, starting with baseball, when the affiliation changed with Edmonton and became the Florida Marlins after having the California Angels all those years.
Yeah.
93. Cam Cole and I flew into Florida. Cam was going to write a little bit about this new Florida Marlins team and how silly it was to have a team, southernmost team in the big leagues in Florida and the northernmost AAA team in Edmonton. And then after a couple of days, it was up to him to peel off and go to Augusta to write the Masters for at the time, the Southern chain of newspapers. Well, that turned into, I want to say, now Cam's retired, but it turned into about a 23 or 24 year run of going to the Masters every year.
That was his first one?
Yeah. And I always thought, oh my goodness, what a sweet gig, and something that I never got to write about. But yeah, that was terrific. And few guys that I knew, I don't know about you, wrote golf as well as Cam Cole. It happens that I worked with him, but his stuff out of Augusta for all those years was just terrific to read. And there were others. The Tiger aspect, you know what now, Bryn, I used to, get into the argument about the greatest ever. And there came a time when Tiger passed everybody except Jack Nicklaus to a lot of people. Having had the pleasure of meeting Arnold Palmer and what a gentleman he was, it was pretty clear well before the pinnacle of his career that he'd surpassed Arnie.
Yep.
Now, it would be nice if he could do it, but you know what? After what he went through with that car wreck, I'm just glad he's even in a position to be able to consider playing golf again, strolling at your community golf course, as opposed to that looks. You remember that day? I mean, is he going to die?
Well, this is coming off of Kobe, right, in Los Angeles. All of a sudden, this breaking story, and I'm going, oh my God, no.
But I'm completely, and then we saw the pictures of him playing with his son.
Yes.
And them both wearing the same, little Tiger and big Tiger. So I still love the Masters, and I'm like you. I will block myself away and watch every minute I can. But Tiger, to me, is tied for my generation, at least, is tied to the Masters like Nicklaus was to so many. That tournament and other great golfers before him. So yeah, and as I said when we were talking to Natasha, it's always sort of been my signal that it's the start of spring is here. It's the Masters.
Oh yeah, absolutely. You touched on it briefly. I don't know if you intended on doing it, but you compared the three golfers and who was the greatest of them all. I hate doing that. I hate saying this guy is the GOAT. I've always hated that because I just think that, okay, Arnold Palmer was responsible for even making golf popular. Yeah. He and Bob Hope, of all people, he and Bob Hope went to NBC and said, this golf thing might be kind of good for television.
Yep.
And the two of them powered powered NBC to start broadcasting golf. And so it was basically nothing more than a recreational sport for most people. And those guys kind of played professionally, but nobody was watching it. So these two guys had this monumental impact on the sport that can never, ever be taken away from those two guys. And it's funny because it was Bob Hope who passed away, and Arnold Palmer said, the guy who's responsible for the popularity of golf in North America is Bob Hope. And I'm thinking, I never really thought of it like that. So you have Arnie down here. Then you have Jack, who's come along and won so many of the majors. And then you have Tiger coming in a different demographic. And to me, I think it's really hard to compare what these guys have done for the sport, except for one thing. They've all done remarkable and magical things for the game. Can't we just leave it at that? Why do we always have to say, this guy is the greatest? Michael Jordan, for me, yeah, okay, he might be the GOAT of the NBA, but LeBron James has been pretty good. You can list off a few guys that have been pretty damn good, and right there with Michael, but I hate doing the comparable and the GOAT thing. Well, look at the situation right now that I'm getting tired of the continual Connor McDavid, and now even Leon Draisaitl, and you've got Austin Matthews in Toronto. Who's the best of them all? And then you take a look at Wayne Gretzky, and I'm thinking, different times, different players, all wonderful, wonderful athletes. Are you not getting tired of this? I guess this is what makes sports go.
Well, bit of a different look for me, Bryn. I'm with you on the cross-era comparisons.
Sure.
When the game is different, depending on the sport, the equipment might be totally different. The arena of play, when you're talking about golf courses.
Quality of the athlete is another one, right? These guys are in unbelievable shape now.
But for here, at any given time, I don't mind. You know what? Let's be honest here. Fans do it. Reporters probably do it between themselves, just not as publicly, because you don't want to be seen as cheering or rooting for a guy on the team you happen to cover. For me now, with what you're referring to, I'm in Edmonton. I'm not on the beat anymore, per se, but I don't mind comparing Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl to Austin Matthews or Steven Stamkos, or pick your guy. I'm not
Nathan McKinnon.
Yeah, I'm not into comparing Connor McDavid to Wayne Gretzky or Austin Matthews to Rocket Richard as a goal, or Ovechkin.
Sure.
Different. Have you seen some of the goalies when even Gretz was getting 92? I mean, no disrespect intended, but they were frickin' awful.
With horrible equipment, smaller equipment.
Gretzky also had to do it with guys water skiing off him.
Yes.
So, I mean, there's too many moving parts. So when you get 10, 15, 20 years apart, I think, hey, it's all good fun if it's fans. I don't bother with it.
Yeah.
But what I do look at now, and I mentioned it to you before we came back on. I look at saw Leon Draisaitl last night now, depending on when you download this podcast. He hit 50 goals again for the second time, joining some very elite company with the Oilers franchise. 50 goals, 51 assists, 101 points. McDavid's at 105 points. I think I made a smart-ass remark to you. Can we please end this talk about Austin Matthews should win the Hart Trophy? It's not a homer call for me, but...
Okay, hang on. Art Ross or Hart?
Hart.
Okay. All right.
I mean, points aren't the only thing, but points are the big thing. It's very seldom you get a defenseman or a guy who's not in the sniff for the Art Ross to win the Hart these days, unless, it's happened, a goaltender, a defenseman. Connor McDavid is the best player in the game, generally speaking. He's the best player in the game this season again. I know that bores some people. I know that bores with some people in the 416. I don't want to hear about Austin Matthews anymore. Austin Matthews, arguably isn't as good as Leon Draisaitl, let alone Connor McDavid. Now, if we want to talk about the greatest goal scorer, we have a conversation that involves Austin Matthews. But the best player today, the favorite for the Hart Trophy, my goodness, it's not Austin Matthews, it's Connor McDavid, and close behind him, Leon Draisaitl.
Okay, so those would be your two picks for the Hart this year?
Those would be 1 and 2, and then there's some names
Wow.
I could slot pretty close, chasing them down the voting path.
And I tend to look at year to year. I don't really care about what you did last year. And and for my cash this year, there's a guy south of us that, first and foremost, I didn't see this coming with the Calgary Flames. The Calgary Flames for me right now are either the best team or the second best team in the West. I don't know what's going to happen in the postseason. Anything can happen. We know that we know how the Stanley Cup playoffs work.
Yep.
But the Calgary Flames for me have had a remarkable season. And I believe that one of the major reasons why they've had a remarkable season is they've got a small little guy who's playing out of his skin this year, who basically tore the Edmonton Oilers apart in the last time they matched up. This is the best game I've ever seen him play. Johnny Gaudreau, for me, would be one of my guys. He'd be in my top 3 guys for the Hart Trophy this year. Austin Matthews is having a great season with the Toronto Maple Leafs this year. I feel he's carrying that team this year, and that's a huge factor for me when I look at the Hart. I'm not convinced right now. Well, McDavid and Leon do amazing things for the Edmonton Oilers, but those other 2 guys for me have elevated their teams much higher than I thought. The Edmonton Oilers are scrambling for a playoff position this year with those 2 guys at a high level. They're not dragging lines 3 and 4 up enough. So for me, I'd be looking at 2 other guys other than the guys in the market that we are in. So whether or not I'm right, you're wrong, remains to be seen. But that's how I would view it.
Oh, no, you're wrong.
And what about Nathan McKinnon in Colorado? They've had a great season. There's 2 goalies in Florida that have been pretty sensational this year that are dragging their teams along at a higher rate. This is going to be a tough year, man, for the Hart.
If it comes to, there's different ways to be the most valuable. Johnny Gaudreau is having a wonderful season.
Contract season.
I mean, I thought it looked for a while there. Let's be honest. He might fade away. He came in with a bit of a bang.
Yep.
And then, but you know what? The main thing he does, because you and I don't know about the leadership in the room.
Right.
We can speculate, Johnny Gaudreau, what a leader. Look at how we only can go based on what they do. And they are the same types of players in this impact. How do they impact the team offensively? I cannot, they'll have some inspiring rushes. They'll score at key times where you go, man, that guy is clutch. However, there's different ways to score. But essentially, that's the main contribution. Anything else is we guess about how they lead, how they inspire. I'm not taking a guy with 92 points over a guy with 105 points.
Regardless of what they do for their team or what they mean for their team?
Well, what they mean is up to interpretation. If it's a bunch of guys who are a bunch of stiffs, if you took them out of the lineup, they'd have nothing left. I think you can take an awful long look at Edmonton, even with the additions of Evander Kane and Zach Hyman having a nice year. There's more depth and balance here than they've had in a while.
Sure.
If you take Leon or Connor out of this lineup, they're dead in the water. They're not even close.
But they might be dead in the water this year, Robin, with these guys. They're not a guaranteed. I think they've got to win 5 more games, quite frankly, and they're in. But they're hanging in there.
I think what I'm getting at, Bryn, is I think the Calgary Flames are a better team without Johnny Gaudreau than the Oilers would be without either one of those 2. Take one of the 2 out of the lineup.
Sure.
And to me, that's the value. What is the team? No, you can sort of judge what a guy brings to a team by having an educated idea about what the team would do without them. And the Oilers it's no cigar city again, for sure, without either one of those guys. The Flames dropped down a notch, but Daryl's got some other guys there, and we've talked about him. A wonderful year from Markstrom, who's bounced back. The defensive core, the personnel is outside of the two names at the top of the marquee. The Flames are a better team. You and I have both said that.
Yep.
So that doesn't diminish what Johnny's done. He's been terrific. He'd definitely be my top 5. I don't know if a top 3. I look at a guy like, we don't see him enough, but Jonathan Huberdeau has had a real renaissance.
Another guy.
What a year. And you do have to consider Austin Matthews. I'm not saying, hey, don't talk to me. I mean, I say talk to me more about the goal scoring. I'm not dismissing him because he's from Toronto. I don't have a Toronto thing, except that I occasionally get tired of the volume of coverage we get. You might, is tonight the night he gets 50? Tonight is the night he got 50. A retrospective look back to the night he got 50.
But that, I don't want to penalize a guy because the television networks that are based in Toronto are just all gaga. To me, I think that's penalizing a guy. What about the young goaltender with the New York Rangers who are having a great season as well? The only problem there is he's a goalie. And goalies usually they could win the Vezina. There's no sense for them winning the Hart. I don't know. I think it's wide open. I think there's some great. I think whoever the top 3 guys are going to be well worth it.
Forgive my fading memory. Is Hasek the last goaltender to win the Hart, by the way?
I'd have to look it up, and I don't have that handy. But you know what? Somebody will always drop us a note. I love that.
Yeah.
So.
There's a lot of players who are really important, and that's why you have, if you're a Norris Trophy winner, you play more minutes for your team than anybody except the guys who stand in the blue paint, the goaltenders.
Yeah.
Sometimes they don't win the Hart, and I think they should because it's tied to rightly or wrongly.
It's tied to numbers.
A large degree of it is the numbers. And like I say, when I look at the guys who are at the top, the guys back east, and I've gone through the voting process. Bryn was the chapter chair here for many years when I was at the Journal and the Sun. When back in the days when you'd physically hand out the ballots as opposed to them being electronic.
Yeah,
I get the number of voters in the East, and I get the uproar over Austin Matthews, and he's a super talented goal scorer. When I looked at the top 5, Bryn, just my last pass at this, the names I have are McDavid, Draisaitl, Huberdeau, Gaudreau, and Austin Matthews.
You can't go wrong with any of those guys.
That's my top 5. I'd say the only particular order would be the top 2. I know that's a stretch for some people. I have McDavid and Draisaitl as the top 2, and I could flip those guys. McDavid might end up with the most points, but Draisaitl, man, I keep watching this guy. What a great story he is.
Yeah.
I mean, he's better than anybody. If you look at the hype that McDavid came in and that's not his fault or his doing, you kind of expected this. Now, when guys fall down and don't deliver on the hype, it's not their fault because they don't create the hype. But we saw Connor McDavid coming from a mile away when he was drafted. And the only thing is for him, and it's a big thing, is to live up to that hype. Leon Draisaitl, this kid out of PA, German. Okay, big kid.
He can set guys up, but can he score? That's what I remember hearing.
And we all said that. And, this guy, if everything goes right, the Oilers could have a big center here who could be a 70-point guy.
I know.
And that's pretty good. Look what he's doing.
Okay, let me ask you this quick, and just a real simple answer from you. If they don't make the postseason, does that lessen you, because you clearly like these two guys here, if they don't make the postseason, does that lessen maybe a vote for a Hart for you?
I'm not a playoff or bust guy.
Okay.
I never been. Some people are, and that's fine. It's a reasonable argument. So
okay.
No.
All right. Let's tell everybody you can get a hold of us on Twitter. The handle's really simple. It's at Outsiders2020. Love hearing from you. More and more guys are dropping notes. Love it. Also tell your friends and subscribers what our RSS feed is. And of course, you can hear us on any of your favorite ear candy sites, Apple, Google, Spotify, Pocket Casts, all sorts out there. And we're also on YouTube. And Robin records from his Lucky Sam studio in Southwest Edmonton. And I record right downtown, not far from Rogers Place, where, by the way, hometown hockey, both Ron McLean and Tara Sloan are here. That place is just rocking on Sunday afternoon. There's not even an Oiler game tonight, but they'll be broadcasting from there as well. So anyway, not far away here at our Road 55 studio. Your support's greatly appreciated. We love it. It's fantastic. Robin, that's it for today.
Yeah.
All right. Talk to you next week.
You sure will, pal.
Have fun storming the castle.
Road 55.